Hey everybody, it's BDF44 coming at you with another video. Eating breakfast. The NBA preseason has arrived. A lot of good stuff is happening. I didn't really want to talk about the specifics of what I've seen just yet. That's not what's on my mind. I'm thinking more so along the lines of defining how I see the landscape of the league in this video. To me, the NBA right now is back in a space where you don't have parity amongst the top to the bottom like last year. You got a lot of parity in the middle, but unfortunately for the league, this may be another one of those years where there's a one team that's so much better than everybody else, and when you start considering who is the biggest threat to that team, it really does come down to that particular team beating themselves or having injuries that will ultimately tell the story. That's how I see the season this year. I don't think this is one of those years where we can say anybody is favored to beat the Lakers with any team that's constructed right now. I know that James Harden is going to likely be on the move at some point. That could potentially change how this looks in terms of whether or not the Lakers have legitimate competition somewhere. But as of right now, there is none. Just simply is none. But I will say that if the Lakers were to get some injuries in some key areas, maybe a key starter or some key role players take away some of our depth, there are some matchups out there that I could live without as a Laker fan. But I just don't see anybody beating Anthony Davis and LeBron James in year two when they already won a championship in year one with less talent around them. I just don't see how you overcome that as they're growing more comfortable with one another. It's just like, okay, how do you beat the Lakers? And they're deep now. That's what you have to understand. We were moderately deep last year and on paper and turned into an extremely deep team because we got so much out of the players that we had on minimal contracts. Everything that I'm discussing is on paper. Basketball games have to be played, and sometimes things happen that can change everything. Even during the course of one basketball game, you could see something that just should not take place in theory. So everything I'm discussing is basically on paper. No games have really been played, period. So with that being said, I'm continuing on that process. I just think that, the Lakers' depth is ultimately too much to overcome. What the Clippers had last year that made everybody excited about them was not only Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, but the fact that they had the best bench in the league. And of course, I've mentioned this before, but the reason why they had the best bench in the league is not because they were very top heavy, or rather deep all the way through, but it was because they were top heavy on their bench. The first two bench players happened to be 6 Men of the Year candidates. So when you're considering that, and ultimately, when we look back on it, the year previous, if I'm not mistaken, Lou Williams won 6 Man, and of course, Trez received 6 Man this previous season just now. So you're looking at what they had was the two reigning 6 Men of the Year as it basically played out. That was why their bench was so strong. But when you start going down the lower end of their bench, they didn't really have overwhelming depth on that Clipper team. If Trez or Lou Williams wasn't playing well, suddenly they weren't as dangerous of a basketball team. They were counting on those two guys to have maximum production in order for them to be as deep as they were. Well, the Lakers, they went and took that formula from the Clippers and did that exact same thing this year with even better stars than the Clippers had and an even better bench than the Clippers had. So that's essentially what I'm telling you. What the Lakers did, in some ways, is they kept the strengths that they had and snatched the strengths that the Clippers had. And ironically enough, the Clippers were, in fact, the biggest threat to the Lakers. So they crippled their greatest threat and stole their mojo. That's what the Lakers did. That is crazy. That's something I don't think I've seen very often in recent memories. When you think about some of the greatest rivalry teams. I don't know what to liken this to. Maybe the Detroit Pistons and the Celtics of the 80s. Imagine the Celtics acquiring the best players on the Detroit Pistons bench the next season, and then just overwhelming the Pistons and not allowing them an opportunity to win or beat them again or what have you, or to get that get back, so to speak, that they would have gotten if they had a chance to see them again. But it's not as equivalent. Just trying to come up with something that will help you understand how I see it. But snatching the rival's mojo the very next season, the very thing that made the rival as good as they were to be your rival, now suddenly has gone into your locker room, double strengthening you from the strength that you already were. It's more or less how I'm looking at it. It's like, wow, I just took their powers and made it my own. I was already better than them anyway, but now we've eliminated them effectively by making their strengths our strengths. So, when you look at it like that, it's like, okay, well, they were the best team that could face the Lakers, and now they're more or less obsolete on paper. So what are we looking at now? The Denver Nuggets. Well, we beat the Denver Nuggets, and they didn't get better. I like the Denver Nuggets. I think they have some rookies. They got younger in some areas. They picked up some guys that they're excited about in the draft, but they lost their best wing defender, and his name is Jeremy Grant. He went off to Detroit. So what they have right now is Michael Porter Jr., who's not a defensive player, who's going to be tasked with some of those defensive assignments that Jeremy had to take on. All the best wings, your LeBron James. Jeremy was the guy checking those people a good majority of the time. And if they were having any type of trouble, it was probably because Jeremy was on them. That was just something that I saw. I don't have the numbers on that, but that's just how I saw it. It seemed like he was always checking the best guy on another team when he was on the floor, and giving them the ability to switch everything because of his ability to kind of play a lot of different positions and be kind of a positionless player offensively as well. When you lose that dynamic, and then you look over at Portland and they gain that dynamic as to where they didn't have it last year, I pretty much look at Denver and say, well, Portland just took your spot, because they're going to be able to do the things that you were able to do last year, and you may not be able to do those things defensively. And when I speak of Portland, I'm thinking about them picking up Covington and picking up Derrick Jones Jr. I just think that they're now the team in the Western Conference that looks the most concerning if I'm any team in the Western Conference not named LA Lakers. They just got a lot better. That's the way I look at Portland. When you have somebody like Dame Lillard, who is a certified destroyer, a killer. We know what Dame is. Dame time is over with. He can shoot from half court. He said he can shoot from half court, and he's been practicing. I believe he's going to hit some of those. I have no doubt. When Dame says he has that type of range, he's already proven it. So when you look at a guy like Dame and say, wow, all he really needs is a real team with some real depth to give him real breathers so that he doesn't get gassed in the playoffs, so that he doesn't find himself without his best role players in the playoffs. Just give them some depth and give them some wings so that they can have a switchability and things of that nature. Now that he has that, there ain't a whole lot standing his way from getting to the Western Conference Finals and facing the Lakers. The only other team that concerns me on paper at that moment would probably be the Dallas Mavericks, because of the greatness of Luka Doncic and just depending on the health and ascension of Kristaps Porzingis, of whom I still think can be a superstar in this league himself. If they can kind of get it all together, they can too rival for that second spot in the West. But as far as them seeing the Lakers, honestly, Lakers in 5 in both of those series as of right now. That's Lakers in 5. What you want me to do? It is what it is. I don't think there's a team in the Western Conference that can even take us to 6 games at this point. In the Eastern Conference, though, they've gotten stronger. I really don't know who's even coming out of the Eastern Conference at this point. The East is about as wide open as it's ever been. Truly. I mean, I look at the Eastern Conference and I say, you got like maybe 5 teams that could be favored to come out of the East. And then you got another 7 teams that are going to be fighting for that bottom half spot. Maybe even 8 teams. And then you got some teams that are supposed to be bad that have just inherited some young talent who may actually change life for them. So you don't know how they're going to affect things over in the Eastern Conference. It's just a very, very wide open East. You're looking at teams like Detroit that have gotten significantly better. You look at teams like Orlando who haven't gotten better but have made the playoffs for many years in a row. Like, it's just a lot going on in the East. You look at the Boston Celtics. They did some things with their roster, but I don't know if they got the bigs that they need. We'll see how Tristan Thompson holds up. We'll see how Robert Williams ascends this year. The Knicks look like they're better. They got some youngsters now. Who are they going to upset? How are they going to affect seeding? You know, there's a lot of stuff going on there. The Nets, obviously Kyrie, is he going to hold up? KD, is he going to hold up? Do they get Harden? Does Philly get Harden? How does year one with Doc go? It's so much in the East, like you just don't know. Is Toronto going to get back to where they've been? You know they're going to play well during the regular season. Are they going to fizzle out in the playoffs? What's up? Like, the East just goes on and on and on and on. Each and every team almost has something going on with them that's interesting. I look at the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now they got some youngsters. They have a real young core at this point. Through the drafts that they've been able to put together a core of guys, and they have some tradable pieces as well. They can get better. They have Andre Drummond, who's just a stone of a center. Who, and I don't mean that in a negative sense. I mean somebody who's just going to be immovable at all times. And fairly durable, if I may say so myself. He's getting better in some areas. He's been weak for a long time. Free throw shooting, he's improved. So hopefully he can become even better there. But I don't see why Cleveland can't have a good season for their standards. You know, fight for an 8th seed. I think they have enough talent now, and their youngsters have gotten strong enough to where whatever their next step should be, I think they can take that. So it just goes on and on, man. It goes on and on. The Atlanta Hawks obviously now have a brand new team. Trae Young, year 3, we know what he is and what he can do. They still got John Collins there, a fairly deep squad down there in Atlanta. So, you know, what are you going to do when you talk about Miami? Obviously, Miami still got it together, and they have some tradable pieces. Maybe they get better. Maybe they get Harden. Your Eastern Conference is about as wide open as it's ever been, you know, and I don't see a team in the East that's so much better than the very best team in the East, to be honest with you. So, yeah, that's what I have to say about that. Unfortunately, because of all of this uncertainty in the Eastern Conference, when it's time for them to face the Lakers in 5. I hate to say it. I don't see a team in the Eastern Conference get the Lakers to a 6 game unless Kevin Durant's playing crazy. If Kevin Durant comes back as KD, Lakers in 6. Sorry, KD and Kyrie. I don't see no answer for the depth that the Lakers provide down there. I don't see nothing that you got that's going to make me say, okay, they can overcome Anthony Davis and LeBron James. No, not even 60-point KD and 50-point Kyrie is going to be able to overcome the onslaught that's coming from that Lakers side when everybody's hitting you with their full force. I mean, it's just too much. It's literally too much. I haven't felt this way since Golden State was in there. KD, you know, and that's the thing. I don't think my Laker team's better than that team. I'm not going to lie to you guys and say that. I do still have the Golden State Warriors of KD, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond as the best team of this generation. I don't know if they're the greatest team of all time, but they are top 5 greatest rosters ever made, ever. And I don't think they're the 5th team in that list either. So I don't have us ranked ahead of them. If they could somehow put that back together, they might get us in 6 or 7. But that's how dominant this team is projected to be. So anything less than the Lakers win the championship is a super disappointment, in my opinion. It would be a failure. But I don't really see too many paths to failure outside of injury. So it's just kind of like it's great. It's bittersweet for me. I love it because it's my team. But it was nice last year not knowing who would win. It was nice last year thinking that even though you had this great Laker team, there was still a great Clipper team you had to deal with. There was still possibility of somebody getting you. You know, it was tough watching Golden State win every year. As somebody who wasn't a fan of Golden State, I imagine it was tough watching the Celtics win 12 championships in a row. Very tough. You know, now I'm not saying we can run up that many, nor am I saying I wouldn't want to as a fan. But like I said, the landscape of the league, it just feels a whole lot better to me if there's a lot of parity. But since we're on top, I'm not going to complain about it. Do not get me confused. I'm going to enjoy this space. It doesn't last for long. You know, we've been down for enough. So if anybody's to dominate, I would love for it to be us. But at the same time, it's like when there's parity, when the league is doing what it's supposed to do and every GM is on point, even when teams come together to make these big, huge conglomerate great teams, you still have some doubt that a great team will overcome and find a way to make a series out of the thing, or even beat beat the great team, not beat my team, but beat whatever the great team at the time is. So that's what I have to say, man. Lakers gonna get another one, and y'all gonna have to live with it. This feels like 2001 all over again. That's what this feels like. When the Lakers had just won the championship against the Pacers and came into the next season, and you looked around and said, nah, ain't none of them gonna see us. And it actually panned out exactly like that. That's exactly how that feeling felt in 2001 when you said, you looked around the league, you saw all them teams, you said, ain't none of them even close. Yeah, it's one of those. My name's BDF44, and I'm out.